Hi, hello, I'm Hope, and I hope you're all doing well today. Today we'll be checking out the subreddit called r/MaliciousCompliance. First story is called, You want me to work my exact hours? Okay, no problem. A few years ago, my manager decided to crack down on workplace discipline. His first rule? Everyone had to work their exact scheduled hours. No more, no less. If your shift was 9 to 5, you couldn't start a minute early or leave a minute late. Now, I'm the kind of person who likes to finish what I'm working on, even if it means staying a little past my shift. But fine, rules are rules. At 5 p.m. sharp, I started dropping everything. Middle of a call with a client? Sorry, it's 5 p.m. Let's pick this up tomorrow. Writing an email? Draft saved, computer shut down. My co-workers followed suit. Soon the office was a ghost town at exactly 5:01 every day. It didn't take long for chaos to erupt. Deadlines got missed, calls were dropped, and the clients weren't happy. Management started to notice. After about 2 weeks, the rule magically disappeared, and we were told, just do what you need to get the job done. Funny how things change when you follow orders too perfectly. Edit/update. A lot of people asked if this was about working long hours. It wasn't. The issue was flexibility. Many of us liked starting early or staying late when it suited us. But the policy forced us into rigid schedules, which didn't work for how we like to manage our workloads. When they realized flexibility made things smoother, they backtracked fast. The manager was probably like, oh no, the consequences of my actions. The next post is about an angry customer who becomes even angrier after OP does what they wanted them to, and it's titled, Turn my service off right now. Okay. I work for a major cable, internet, TV, and home phone provider. That one that is probably the most hated. You know the one. No, I don't know the one. I presume this is a brand that's well known in the States, so if anyone knows which one is it, I'd be curious to know. Anyhow, the department I work in is responsible for either saving a customer or turning their services off. Call came in transferred from our tech support team, and by this time, the customer was already on the phone for an hour. Tech agent was able to get services back up and running, but he was now asking for a large credit for 1 day of services out. As soon as I got on the phone, it was demands. Here's what you're going to do. If you can do this, then turn my service off immediately. I no longer want to be a customer. I tried to calmly explain to this very rude man I could not credit him over $200 for 1 day of service, but would be more than happy to process a credit more appropriate. He declined again and again, demanded that his service be turned off immediately. I reiterate the immediately part to him, and he says, yup, right now. Cue malicious compliance. I turned off all his services right there, that very second. He started screaming that he was watching that, and what am I going to do without internet? I told him I was only doing what he asked. This ended with me restoring services and giving him a credit appropriate to his 1 day outage, which we figured out was user error on his end. Yeah, I don't know which man this plan bought, but I don't think anything is worth $200 for a day. I can see the side of, yeah, you can't use any of your stuff, so of course the compensation should be a bit more than just how much you'd pay for a day, but still, $200 is insane. But also don't be a jerk. Customer support won't be nicer to you if you're meaner to them. There is no secret discount that you can only get if you're rude to the employees. Oh, and also kind of funny how it turned out it wasn't even the company's fault. One of the commenters said, I was hoping this ended with him using the phone services you provided to call you, so his call suddenly cuts out. And then the OP replies, it has happened before, and it used to happen so much that they have a whole built-in system that keeps the phone active for a half an hour after disconnect. Yeah, I was also expecting the call to just stop after OP canceled the services. But alas, the company knew this kind of situations happen. This next story is a bit longer than others, so you'll have plenty of time to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel while I'm reading it. It's called You Don't Want the Female to Take Lead? No problem. This is a small bit of maliciousness that happened years ago, but to this day is still one of my favorite stories to tell. So there needs to be a bit of context to this one for you to understand the beauty of what happened. I was in traditional Kung Fu school for 9 years. My Sifu, aka the teacher, was one of the most honest and respectable men I've ever known. In this school, there was certain etiquette you had to follow out of both respect for the art and your fellow students. We had things like bowing before entering doorways, always facing north to take off our sash, stuff like that. Keep in mind that we weren't just teaching students here. We fostered a family and treated one another as if we were all brothers and sisters. One of the rules was that the men wore their sash on the right, while women wore their sashes on the left. I'm a trans male, and my Sifu was one of the very few people who knew this. My Sifu and I talked about it when I came out to him because I was concerned about how it would affect the etiquette of the school, and we both agreed that neither of us cared how I wore my sash, so I just kept it on the left out of habit. Very friendly conversation. At my school we did a performance every year for Chinese year called the Lion Head Dance. We would do this for restaurants, schools, or even at event centers. We even got to perform for the Chinese consulate at one time. Basically, one person is the head of the lion while the other operates the tail, and we work together to cleanse space to ensure a year of good fortune for the establishment and scare away evil spirits. Everyone always loved these events, and it was some of the funniest performance I had ever done. There's drums, dancing, firecrackers, the whole deal. I was almost always in a lion with my Sifu because we made a surprisingly good team. One year, we went to this little Chinese restaurant who hired us to do our normal thing. We get there, we set up, lay out the equipment and begin stretching before the performance. This performance was one lion, with me in the tail and my Sifu in the head. As we were talking and getting ready, suddenly the owner of the establishment walks over to my Sifu and I see the most disappointed look on his face. My Sifu asks if everything is alright, and this guy just stared on my Sifu through gritted teeth. He originally asked why I was standing there, and my Sifu, while confused, said that I was his tail for tonight. The owner said that this was highly disrespectful because a woman should never be in performance and should never be the lion. My Sifu, with now a deadpan look on his face, chuckled and basically said, we don't live in the days of Chinese dynasties anymore, sir. This is my student, I'm their teacher, and they are more than welcome to perform and represent my school. The owner kept off about how it's disrespectful to the culture and how it shouldn't even be in the show because I was female. My Sifu looked back at me, looked at the owner, got a cheeky little grin at his face and said, no problem. He turned to me, grabbed my sash, twisted it to the right side, bowed and addressed me as Didi, meaning younger brother, before turning back to the owner. He had the most shocked and appalled look on his face, and it took me everything I had to not just burst up laughing. The owner, huffled, told me to just do the show and stormed off. And just as a cherry on top of this interaction, I went to get into the tail and my Sifu stopped me, motioning for me to get into the head of the lion. So I got the lead show of the night, and the owner just had to sit back and deal with the fact that he didn't get his way by throwing a sexist fit. The year after, we got hired by the same restaurant, and my Sifu, instead of rejecting it, made absolutely sure that the performance that night was all female students. The owner didn't say a word. I really like this story. The sweet revenge part, since now only women were in that performance. Completely delete a client's company's website and email services? Are you sure? Okay. This happened a few years ago, so details are a bit fuzzy and chat is paraphrased. I was tier 2 tech support for a company that handles my country's largest internet service provider's entire professional email services, all its DNS management services, and a large portion of its website building and web hosting services. This company is tiny, minute, not even a blip in the radar, but has power that I will likely never again hold at my fingertips. One day, a ticket comes in from the internet service provider. Big client company is moving away from our proprietary email services and into Microsoft 365 or some such equivalent exchange. This usually meant I got to help the client through the processes of changing DNS records, migrating inboxes, or just backing up emails and even eventually setting up some stuff on the Microsoft side. Technically not my job, but the ISP's Tier 1 tech support was woefully untrained for anything even remotely technical, and terribly unprepared for most things merely commercial. And my company was awesome and treated me right. So, ticket. ISP. Client is moving from service X to service Y. Please remove their subscription from the database. Me. There seems to be some sort of a mistake, which is very common. We remove them from there once the new service is set up and running. Otherwise, it will delete everything in their subscribed package, including all email storage, DNS records, and website. You likely want to change their subscription to not include email services, but keep the rest, since your Microsoft subscription doesn't include DNS and web hosting management. And even that change only after they have their new email service set up. ISP. Yada yada, confirm. Remove their subscription. Me. Are you absolutely sure? This process is not recoverable. All their emails, DNS records, and entire website, including database, will be permanently deleted. ISP. Request has been submitted. Remove subscription. At this point, it's been a couple of days since the first ticket, so I call my boss. Absolutely wonderful guy and extremely intelligent, and tell him what they're asking me to do. Boss. Alright, let's show them that they pay us because we know things and they don't. Don't delete the subscription, but suspend all services that would be affected. Keep those tickets at hand and expect a phone call. If they call you, tell them to talk to me. I honestly thought OP would delete everything as per protocol, but this is really smart thinking on the boss's part. God, that felt good. I mean, I felt bad for the client because their entire company basically shut down for an afternoon. But when they called my work phone directly from ISP, which is uncommon, usually just for emergencies, and the nice lady asked me what had happened, with client in that tone that says, I'm doing my best to hear all sides before making a decision, but I'm freaking the hell out right now. And I directed her to the ticket where I very clearly stated what would happen if I did what they told me to, and then told her to call boss. I felt so vindicated. Boss later told me to let them sweat for a couple of hours because the process should have been unrecoverable, and then turn the services back on. ISP was, yet again, absolutely thrilled with us, and my name kept coming up even more often as the person that solves things. Our next story is called Delete the Legacy Knowledge Apartment? Okay. A former employer has decided to shoot themselves in the foot with a bazooka. I thought I'd share it here so you can laugh at them too. In a nutshell, the business built its own in-house software which is designed to cover all aspects of the business. From invoicing, tracking stocks, creating reports, semi-automatic direct debt billing, and virtually everything else, 1,000 sub-areas. As such, the business ended up with 3 IT departments. One was more hardware issue and basic IT issues. There was the medium IT department who could fix small issues within specific sub-areas of the software, and the legacy team who worked on the rawest base level of the software and had kept it functioning for over 20 years. In an effort to cut costs, okay, here we go. This is always where the bad things happen. I mean, when will people learn the phrase save a penny, lose a pound? Well, anyhow, Anyhow, let's continue reading. In an effort to cut costs, the senior management decided that the legacy team were no longer required, as they were creating a whole new software anyway and would be ditching the old one within a year or so. In doing so, they also insisted that the large office they occupied was completely emptied. This included several huge filing cabinets of paperwork, comprising dozens of core manuals, and countless hundreds of up-to-date how-to-fix documentation pieces, as well as earlier superseded documents they could refer back to. The legacy team sent an email to the seniors basically saying, "Are you sure?" To which they eventually received a terse email back specifically stating to destroy all paperwork. After reading and listening to so many of these stories, you can't not learn that "are you sure?" or "can I get this in writing?" is basically a synonym for "you're making a grave mistake. Please think about the consequences." They were also ordered to delete all digital files to free up a rather substantial amount of space on the shared drive and wipe their computer back to factory settings. So it was all shredded, the files erased totally, and computers wiped. The team removed every trace of their existence as ordered and left for greener pastures. It's been 3 months, and there was recently a power outage, which had broken something in the rebooted system. The company can no longer add items into stock, which means invoicing won't work, as the system reads as "can't sell what we don't have." In turn, this means there's no invoices for the system to bill. So it's back to pen, paper, and shredded Excel sheets to keep track of stocks. Manually, typing invoices into a template and having to manually check every payment received against paper invoices. All of which is resulting in a massive amounts of overtime required to keep up with the demand. What did I say before? Save a penny, lose a pound? Yeah, exactly. The company has reached out to the legacy team, but they've all said without the manuals they were ordered to destroy or erase, they're not sure how to fix it. The new system is still at least a year out. Of course it is. On the positive side, 2 of the senior managers have a nice large office to share and sit in. Yeah, I mean, that's what you get for preemptively deleting everything. Look, here's an idea from a silly little demon. Delete the old program only after you have the new program running for some time, not before. You cannot use your allotted meal budget to tip. I travel a lot for work, and my company agreement is that I get a set amount for food every day. I don't have a knack for fancy food, so I typically just get what I get and tip heavily to maximize the dollar amount. This was never a problem in the past, until my company got acquired and the new company is aggressively cutting costs. Someone from HR emailed me to tell me I was financially on the hook for tips. I couldn't expense them anymore. So now I just buy the food I eat from the grocery store, eat cheaply, and spend the rest on donuts and coffee for all of my co-workers everywhere I travel. There is a set budget for food every day. If you're going to be a penny-pinching piece of shit, I will always find ways to spend that money within our agreement to give to others. Next time, I think I'll feed the homeless. Need I remind my company that I'm doing them a favor by traveling because they don't want to pay full-timers in those areas? Don't be cheap. Okay, yeah, it's honestly so stupid. I mean, you've already allocated that portion of the money for food. What do you care what the employee does with it? And it's not even as if OP used it for something completely different. It was just for food, for tips. That's so stupid. Oh well. Our next story is called "Boss Told Me to Organize My Tools." I've been a mechanic for nearly 15 years. I'm the lead tech in my shop, and my company just sold recently to a different corporation, and with that came a new boss. A little bit of a history about the new boss. He's 22 and the son of one of my older bosses, so everybody suspects a bit of nepotism at play. The older boss was ruthless and a jerk. and it really put a dent in my confidence about being a mechanic, so I may hold somewhat of a grudge against the family, but I tried to do my best to move on and just do my job. The new boss and I have had some minor issues already in the 3 months he's been there, but I'm the type of person who can generally put my feelings to the side if the money keeps ending up in my paycheck. Today, however, that changed. I will admit I'm not the most organized person. I have ADHD and at 33 years old, still learning to function without my medicine that I weaned off at 26. My toolbox is normally cluttered, but I keep all my tools in my area or on top of my box. It's the system that works for me. This morning, I clocked in and was about to unlock my box when the new boss came up to me and said, "You will not be working on the cars today until your box is organized." I said, "My box is organized in the way it works for me." He shot back with, "Not good enough for me or the company. I need to be able to find tools when I need them, and it needs to look neat and orderly for when corporate comes through." I paused for a second and said, "So you're telling me that you need to be able to find my tools that I have purchased when you need to use them?" I don't remember signing that agreement. He nodded and muttered something about insubordination and that he would be passing off all the work to the other technician until it was completed to his satisfaction. The amount of the audacity this boss has to think he has any say about someone else's property. It would be one thing if they were all over the place, but they're not. Okay, well, let's continue reading to see how OP employ malicious compliance. I assumed he was bluffing until 3 cars came in and all 3 tickets were handed to the other tech. I don't have any problem being told to clean up, and I would have done it his way, but I had a problem with his tone, and this was messing with my paycheck. So while he was in the back doing tire inventory, I opened the top drawer from my toolbox, spread my arms, and swept every single thing into the drawer that I could. I repeated for the second and the third drawer until the top was clean. I used the same process for both of my smaller cards until each one could be closed and locked. Then I clocked out for lunch. I'm currently sitting in my car in the parking lot, eating lunch and browsing job listings while watching him try to open all my drawers to use my tools because 3 more cars came in and the other tech can't handle 6 at a time. Too long, didn't read. My boss withheld work to make me organize my tools his way, so now I'm withholding my tools completely. Update. I did not expect this to blow up like this. I clocked back in from lunch and boss asked to speak with me. Apparently, he called the district manager and also his dad, who is a district manager of another district, for advice, and it sounds like they both told him to make it right and that he could not afford to lose me. I know how it sounds, but it's true. He told me that he just wanted to make a good impression on corporate, who would be coming through in a few weeks, and that he shouldn't have targeted me personally. He paid me for the 3 vehicles he worked on, and I let him know that I was willing to work with him, but if he ever spoke down to me again, there would not be a do-over. I would leave. He also inquired about buying his own tools. He's not a bad dude, just a little anxious, I guess. I suppose I'll stick around for a little, as the paychecks are worth it and the drive is convenient and I have a wife and a house to pay for. As for some of the responses, yes, I am somewhat of a slob with my toolbox, but I'm also average 10 to 15 cars a day, so I don't always have time or the drive to neatly organize my tools daily. He said he'll be bringing his toolbox from home and calling or texting to ask to borrow before borrowing. I guess I'm somewhat of a rare mechanic, as I don't mind people borrowing my tools as long as they are put back. Also, the empty toolbox comments. I own all 4 toolboxes, so they would be coming with me if I left. Thanks for the support, guys. Seems like maliciously complying paid off for once. Let's hope your boss learned his lesson and won't be giving you any more trouble. Next post is called Who is really watching the clock? Backstory: I used to work in hotels years ago. The hotel I worked at has a policy where there must be at least one staff member at the hotel 24/7. I worked at the unenviable but fireproof position of part-time front desk and relief night audit, so I never knew when I was going to be working. 16-hour shifts weren't common, but expected of me when the main night audit called in sick. The story: I had a middle manager who got bored and liked to ruffle feathers for entertainment. Annoying, but I only had to deal with it for 2 to 3 days a week because no one else wants to cover the night audit. They also loved to sleep in and would routinely call in late in the mornings. I really couldn't stand them, but they were my boss, so after giving the essential information and passed the torch from the night audit to the morning manager and crew, I clocked out promptly and got out of the line of fire, or so I thought. I get a call waking me up at 11 a.m. because I was sleeping off my graveyard shift that night. I was told to report to the hotel for a disciplinary meeting that includes middle manager and the general manager of the hotel, my boss's boss. I asked them what the meeting was about, and they replied that it was due to my excessive use of overtime. I then asked them if I could come in before my shift at night so that I could actually get some sleep for my next graveyard shift. They replied that I would have to arrive within the hour. Took me 30 minutes to drive to get there, or they would tack on insubordination or some other nonsense to my file as well. I needed a job for rent, so I complied and got to the hotel half asleep. I'm glad nothing happened to OP, because driving when you're tired is really dangerous, since the likelihood of accidents is much higher, even accidents including death. And no job in the world is worth death. As I'm driving, I'm trying to figure out how to explain away the nice overtime additions on my paycheck. Took me a solid 10 minutes, but I remembered that the middle manager had yet to actually show up on time for the past month. That wakes me up more, and I show up to the meeting absolutely cheerful and smiling, much to the displeasure of the general manager and my boss. Boss goes on a tirade about how abusing company time is horrible in many different ways. I no longer have my eat shit in green, but I'm still unfazed by the dressing down and letting them blow off their steam that was likely put on them by payroll or HR about how my paychecks were getting too fat for their liking. This is confirmed by a shorter but more professional dressing down by my general manager about me costing the company excess money and that I should know better because I run the hotel books. I calmly state that all the overtime statements were true and that I would like to compare my punching times to the staffing schedule and the start and the end times of the people I was relieving in the evening and who was relieving me in the morning. I explained to them that I was only staying on until the next crew relieved me and I had sufficient time to brief in the incoming crew, but the corporate policy of the hotel must be maintained 24/7. They do and see that there is only a 3 to 5 minutes overlap between my shift and the person relieving me. General manager looked pissed, and middle manager went from smug to looking like they got their hand caught in the cookie jar, as their clockings showed usually 7-ish and sometimes even 7:30, when their start time was 6. I was told by the general manager that they would reimburse me for the minutes to drive me to and from the hotel, as well as the duration of the meeting, and that the write-up was being dropped in the light of the new information. Fallout. Middle manager still made my life miserable until I left, but at least they never gave me grief about overtime after that and actually started showing up to work at 6 a.m. and not snooze until 7. My paychecks were less, but at least I got more sleep because I was now better able to beat the morning commute at the end of my shift. It kinda sucks how OP still got indirectly punished for this, money-wise. Edit. I knew my paychecks were coming in hefty for my wage. I never made a stink about staying late because hotels pay maybe 5 cents more than minimum wage if you work graveyard shifts. I kept my mouth shut about my paycheck. I needed that extra cash and dealt with the sleep deprivation for the almost guaranteed additional hour of overtime at the expense of a lazy and petty boss. I had my moment of, how do I save myself? On the way to work and was conveniently able to throw my rubble-rousing manager under the bus in one go. And someone commented exactly what I was talking about before. As a former graveyard worker, 7 to 11, it really grinds my gear when the employers expect you to attend mandatory meetings/training in the middle of sleepy time. They know your hours. Expecting employees that are coming off an all-nighter to be at work 4 hours after you've gone home is bonkers. Night shift working already screws with your sleep. I've known people that left to go home and never made it because they fell asleep while driving. Sleepy driving is equivalent to drunk driving. The next story is called, "Won't get paid more for doing my job quicker? Alright, I'll just do my job slower." I'm a software developer at a medium-sized company where I would get a project and a time frame to get said project done. This time frame is insane, not because of the lack of time to get it done, but because of the excessive amount of time it would give me. Something that I could get done in 2 weeks is given 3 months to complete. My first 6 months at the company were spent with me doing said projects in the amount of time they took me, as opposed to the amount of time given for them to be completed. And when my performance review came back, I assumed my raise and bonus would reflect my performance. I still remember one advice for this kind of situation. And it's basically to pretend it took you longer than it actually did, but still less than the deadline. This way you won't get more work, plus you'll look like a competent worker who never exceeds their deadline. Anyway, as many of you can probably guess from where I'm posting this story, my raise did not in fact reflect my performance, and instead was the base amount my contract guaranteed. My response to that was not to complain, as I frankly didn't care, and instead just stop submitting my progress at the same pace I had been doing it. I still did it in 2 weeks for 3 months, but it was a work from home job and I would just add in bits and pieces to keep the progress at the expected pace while having the completed project on the personal machine. I still work there and have been working there for 4 years now, and very happy spending maybe 2 months of the year doing my job and then working at my second job at a different business as a software developer, as it's a work from home job and there's no mandatory check-ins or anything of the sort. I have been offered a decent raise to return to my original pace multiple times, but I've declined each time, and after around a year and a half they accepted the current pace as I still do quality work with no delays. I guess don't shaft me originally and expect me to change my mind when you realize my value. No idea. I just make way more than I would have needed to and effectively get triple my salary as my other job makes twice my lousy job. Hell yeah, well done OP. HR and payroll manager asked to automate their decisions away. In my first job, I worked in IT as an access and permission administrator at a large company with significant technological debt. The environment included custom software dating back to the Windows 9X and even DOS era. Initially, the work was quite tedious, involving a lot of back and forth communication between multiple departments. We had to ensure that each employee had the necessary training and documentation to access data in the scope requested by their manager. Additionally, we needed approval for the manager of the department related to the system role in question. On top of that, the company's excessive paper-only bureaucratic workflow made the work go at a snail's pace. A single SAP account for a blue-collar worker required at least 3 forms signed by different people. The heads of the departments responsible for signing those papers didn't feel any urgency to send them to us quickly. A good example of this is when I, myself, waited over 2 weeks after being hired in the IT department before my first account was set up. Until that, I only had a guest account that allowed me to access the main internal website with the company's procedures, regulations, and other basic information. Up to this point, each signed form had to be physically delivered to us, which was agonizingly slow, given that the company had multiple branches. We decided to automate away the paperwork. Our first step was to allow the use of scanned documents. It was a partial success. While it eliminated the courier delays, management still required us to sign the physical copies afterwards, which we mass stamped at the end of each month. The next step was to introduce a fully electronic workflow. We faced significant resistance from upper management, so we had to settle on a system that mostly replicated the existing paper processes. Despite this, it was a game changer. We created presets that managers could select and customize as needed, using data from these customizations to create better fitting presets. We also developed workflows that automatically generated and assigned sub-tickets for necessary approval and tracked how long it took, sending reminders if needed. And finally, we got an approval from HR to access layoff data to generate user block/removal tickets. Sometime after we rolled out the new system, the HR/payroll manager made a big fuss. She was furious that her team was still waiting weeks to get their permission and questioned whether all our work has been for nothing. That really struck a chord with me. Inside, I was overjoyed, but I did my best to keep a natural expression. At that time, we were working on summary reports with burn down and bottlenecks charts. And I already knew that tickets requesting HR/payroll access were spending over most of their lifespan waiting for her or one of her sub-managers to approve them. Wait, so let me get this straight. The manager was angry because the OP didn't deliver permission fast enough while being the one causing the delay? The manager immediately went on the defensive, claiming she couldn't keep up with the amount of tickets. She then requested a change. She wanted any request from her employee to be automatically approved within the relevant scope of their subdepartment. For example, a request for an HR worker to have full HR access and limited payroll access would be automatically approved for HR access, but not for payroll, and vice versa. Automatically approving requests? What could possibly go wrong? I was skeptical, but wasn't exactly in a position to argue. I asked my boss to join the discussion and explained that the goal was to prevent overly permissive approvals that could lead to unauthorized access. I tried to convince her to brainstorm together potential edge cases before making a blanket approval, but she was already set on her decision and wasn't interested in discussing details. My boss shrugged and said it would be her responsibility. He told me to write up an official document outlining the change and we would proceed with the implementation. The only request we had was to include a line that each such request would still be created, assigned to as normal and marked as automatically approved by the manager's decision. I uploaded the scan into our system and, anticipating that it would eventually backfire, made a photocopy to keep it handy in the top drawer of my desk. The original copy went to the archive. A few weeks later, she stormed into our room. The speed with which she flung the door open made it clear she was furious. She demanded to know why we granted full access to payroll data to her subordinate. I think it was the only time I ever heard anyone yell in the company. I calmly reminded her of her request to automatically approve in-department access requests. She wasn't having it, explaining that one of her low-ranking subordinates from the payroll subdepartment had accessed the salaries of everyone in their department, including managers, and was unhappy with the paycheck disparity. Isn't it obvious that they shouldn't be able to do that? Well, yeah, to a human, but that decision was automated away by your request. I handed her a copy of the document she signed, which instructed us to automatically approve any and all such tickets, without exception. Immediately afterwards, she asked us to roll back the change while she wrote up another documentation to cancel the previous one. In the following days, she meticulously reviewed all those tickets and requested us to reduce access for several users. I have to admit, she did a thorough job and kept up a good pace interviewing new requests, doing it daily instead of once every week or two, as before. In the end, we managed to distill a subset of permissions that could be approved automatically and proceeded to implement a similar approach with other departments. P.S. I didn't know whether that payroll employee managed to get the raise, but I'm sure they weren't fired, as we didn't receive any tickets to block or remove any accounts from the department in the following months. It would be nice if they got the raise, and I'm glad they didn't get fired over this. A commenter added their story. I found a list of salaries of all my boss's direct reports that he left on the copier. I discovered I made significantly less than my co-workers who had similar or reduced responsibilities and had the same tenure. I took it to my boss, told him I saw the disparity, and he needed to address it quickly. He said there was nothing he could do about it, and it was what it was. I updated my resume and started taking days off, going on interviews. When he asked me why I was taking time off, I told him I was looking for a company that valued me and paid me appropriately. He got very pale and left my office. I continued interviewing. A few days later, I received an off-schedule, very large raise. Yay! And that's why, people, you should talk about your pay. If you don't know what's fair pay, you'll have no idea if you're getting underpaid. If you like this video, give it a like and click on the screen to watch another video about malicious compliance. And thank you for watching. With your help, I'll be back in hell in no time. Fix it now. You got it, boss. I was working in a hotel in the UK as a lobby boy. My afternoon job was to handle guests' requests for extra pillows, blankets, etc. The system worked like this. The guests informed the reception, the details were written in a notebook, example, room XY, pillow, and every so often, I checked the book, solved the problem, and ticked them off when done. One night, during dinner, the hotel boss wrote a note in the book. Room XXX, hot water tap is not working. I went to the room, checked it, yup, not working. I went back and wrote in the book. Can't fix it, call a plumber. On my next day, there was a new message. Fix it now. Underlined 3 times. Yes, please order someone to do the job that they're not only not paid to do, but are also very much not qualified to do, instead of calling the professionals. What could possibly go wrong? I wonder. Well, I went back to the room, checked the hot water again. In the UK, there are 2 taps on the sink, one for cold and one for hot. Still couldn't fix it. I tried a few things. Somehow the pipe, the one from the wall to the sink, popped out and boiling hot water started pouring onto the floor at full force. Panic mode on. I grabbed the phone and called the reception. Busy. So I sprinted through the hotel, the room was on the farthest side, jumped into the reception and shouted, "Room XY, plumber, now!" Then I rushed back to the room. The water was still gushing out at a full force, so I just sat on the edge of the bathtub, holding the pipe so the water poured into the tub instead of flooding the floor. After about 3 minutes of this, the hotel boss picked into the bathroom, went pale, and ran away. 5 more minutes passed, then the fire alarm went off because of the steam. Fortunately, the staff already knew what was happening, so they told the guest it was a false alarm and didn't evacuate the hotel. Another 10 minutes later, they finally shut off the water supplies for the entire wing of the hotel. A plumber arrived and fixed the tap in 3 minutes. Now come the fun part, cleaning. Surprisingly, there wasn't much water in the bathroom, considering the tap had been gushing for over 15 minutes. So I went 1 floor lower to see where all the water had gone. I entered the room's bathroom, switched on the light, but it was very dim. That's when I realized the bowl-shaped lamp covered on the bathroom ceiling was filled to the brim with water, with the light bulb happily sitting inside it. Oh shit. Light off. Drained the water from the lamp cover, mopped up the bathroom too, but still, it didn't seem like enough water for what had happened. So I went lower. Below the bathroom, on the ground floor, there was a corridor. Luckily, not another room. But the ceiling had gotten so wet it collapsed. A 2 by 3 meter section of it had come crashing down onto the carpet. After 50 minutes in a sauna-like bathroom, 30 minutes of cleaning and clearing the rubble, I finally stepped outside for some fresh air. That's when my roommate walked past, took one look at me and asked, "Did someone puke on you?" Since then, whenever I say I can't fix something, they actually believe me and call a professional. And good thing too. I mean, they should have done that from the start, but look, at the very least, they've learned a lesson. Click on the screen to watch more Malicious Compliance. And thank you for watching this video. With your help, I'll be back in hell in no time. Our last story for today is titled, "You must use the self-checkout." Yes, sir, but it's not going to work. I was at a local gas station and it has a self-checkout system. It also takes food stamps. The rule is you have to go to the register, not the self-checkout, to use food stamps card. I was there today with a food stamp card getting me some lunch, and the guy was manning the self-checkout. It came to my turn, and the following conversation happened. "Cashier, come on up." "Oh, I've got to use the register. No, you can use the self-checkout. Now come up. You're wasting time." "Sir, I have a food..." "You must use the self-checkout. Come up now or leave." "Yes, sir." I walked up and scanned my items and tried to use my food stamp card, and like I knew it didn't work. "Cashier, what the hell is going on with that dumb thing?" Me, showing him my card. "Sir, I was trying to tell you I have a food stamp card. I have to use the regular register." "Cashier, come over and let's get this over with. The next customer can get this one." I walked over, paid for my items and left. All I could do is walk out the door and laugh. If only the cashier let OP speak and didn't interrupt them, then there wouldn't be any problems, but he decided to be a jerk for no reason, and well, this is the result. If you enjoyed this video, you should click on the screen to watch a video all about petty revenge. And thank you for watching this video. With your help, I'll be back in hell in no time.